No one could handle the billionaire's daughter. 6 nannies had quit. 4 psychologists had failed. And on this frozen Thanksgiving Eve, inside the most expensive restaurant in Manhattan, the screaming had finally paralyzed 200 of New York's wealthiest diners, until a waitress with worn shoes did the impossible in 30 seconds. But what happened that night was more than a miracle. It was the first crack in a wall that had kept 3 broken hearts apart for far too long. And before the snow melted in spring, that crack would shatter everything. The silence inside the obsidian room was absolute. Not the peaceful quiet of contentment, but the terrible hush that follows catastrophe. Every fork had stopped midair. Every conversation had died. Even the jazz quartet in the corner had gone still, their instruments lowered like flags of surrender. All eyes pointed toward Table 1. The table belonged to Robert Montgomery, 52 years old, CEO of Titan Global, the furniture empire his father had built from sawdust and ambition 50 years prior. Silver threaded through his dark hair at the temples. Lines carved deep around eyes that had seen too much grief. A man who looked like he carried the weight of skyscrapers on his shoulders. Tonight, he was on his knees. His daughter Sophie sat rigid on the polished marble floor, 7 years old, small for her age. Dark curls tangled around a face frozen in terror. Her hands clamped over her ears so hard her knuckles had gone white. Her mouth open in a scream that seemed to have no beginning and no end. It was not a tantrum. It was something far worse. It was the sound of a nervous system shattering under invisible pressure. Standing over them both was Victoria Sterling, 48, polished like expensive marble, red dress that cost more than most people earned in a month, her face a mask of fury barely controlled. Her manicured fingers wrapped around Sophie's thin arm, yanking. "Get up," she hissed through clenched teeth. "The press is outside. You are embarrassing your father." Sophie kicked, her small foot connected with Victoria's shin. The woman gasped, mask slipping completely now. "You little brat." Robert tried to intervene, his voice cracked with exhaustion and something that sounded like despair. "Victoria, stop. She is having an episode. She cannot control this." Victoria whirled on him. "An episode? She is acting out because you spoil her. She needs discipline, not coddling." The restaurant manager appeared at Robert's elbow, a thin man named Gillette who looked like he might faint. His voice trembled. "Mr. Montgomery, perhaps we could move to a private room?" Robert's control snapped. His voice rose, echoing off the vaulted ceiling. "She will not move. Can you not see she is frozen?" Phones were coming out now, cameras angling for the perfect shot. The billionaire CEO on his knees, his daughter screaming, his fiancée yanking a child like defective merchandise. This would be on social media within minutes. Stock prices would shudder. Board members would panic. None of that mattered to Robert Montgomery. He had stopped caring about his image the day his wife died. All he cared about was the small, terrified girl in front of him, and he had no idea how to help her. From the service station near the kitchen, someone else was watching. Claire Ashworth had been a waitress at the Obsidian Room for 3 months. Before that, she had served coffee at diners, sandwiches at delis, whatever kept the lights on and her mother's medication paid for. She was 38 years old, tired eyes that had seen too many goodbyes, hands that never stopped moving, an old uniform that had been washed so many times the black had faded to charcoal gray. She stood perfectly still now, water pitcher forgotten in her hands, watching the scene at Table 1 unfold like a slow-motion car crash. She saw what the others did not see. The busboy 2 tables over had dropped a tray of wine glasses 7 minutes earlier. The crash had been deafening. That was when Sophie had shattered, not before. The exact moment the glass exploded on marble. Claire saw the way Sophie rocked. Not tantrum rocking, self-soothing rocking. The repetitive motion of someone trying to regulate a nervous system flooded with input it could not process. She saw the bright overhead lights hitting Sophie's face, the clinking silverware from nearby tables, the heavy floral perfume radiating from Victoria like toxic fog, all of it pouring into a small body with no filter, no way to sort signal from noise. Sensory processing disorder. Claire knew it the way a soldier knows the sound of incoming fire. She had lived it. Her younger brother Daniel had the same struggles. 28 years old now, living in a group home in New Jersey because their parents had died too young and left Claire to figure it out alone. She had spent 10 years learning Daniel's language, the language of a nervous system that experienced the world at unbearable volume. She watched Victoria grab Sophie's shoulder again, shake her, and something inside Claire broke. Not my business, she told herself. I need this job. Rent is due. Mom needs medication. But that child was suffering, and Claire knew exactly how to help. Her feet moved before her mind could stop them. She set down the water pitcher, grabbed a heavy linen napkin from the service cart, moved toward table one with the quiet certainty of someone who had walked this path before. The manager, Gillette, tried to intercept her. Miss Ashworth, return to your station immediately. Claire walked past him like he had not spoken. Victoria saw her coming, glared with eyes like frozen steel. We do not need a waitress right now. Claire did not respond, did not look at Victoria, did not look at Robert. Her entire focus narrowed to the small girl on the floor, the one everyone was grabbing and shouting at and making worse. She dropped to her knees on the cold marble. She did not touch Sophie. That was critical. Touch during sensory overload felt like fire on skin. Instead, Claire did something so strange that the entire restaurant fell even more silent, if such a thing were possible. She took the linen napkin, the heavy white cloth that cost $40 to launder, and she placed it over her own head. She sat there on the floor of the most expensive restaurant in Manhattan, cross-legged, under a napkin, completely still, completely silent. Sophie's screaming hitched. The sound caught in her throat like a skipped heartbeat. The small girl stopped rocking, her hands lowered just slightly from her ears. She stared at the bizarre sight in front of her, a stranger, an adult, sitting under a napkin tent like it was the most normal thing in the world. The absurdity of it broke through the panic, created a tiny space between stimulus and response, just enough space for Sophie to breathe. Claire lifted one corner of the napkin, peeked out at Sophie. Her face was calm, not smiling. Smiling would be pressure to perform, to reciprocate. Just calm, present, safe. She held up 3 fingers, then 2, then 1. She dropped the napkin corner. Sophie blinked. The room was quieter now. Someone had dimmed the lights. Claire must have signaled to someone earlier. The harsh overhead glare had softened to amber. The scary woman with the grabbing hands had stepped back. And this strange person that was sitting on the floor offering something Sophie had not felt in so long, she had almost forgotten the word for it. Safety. Sophie crawled forward. The entire restaurant held its breath. 200 people frozen in place, watching a 7-year-old child approach a waitress under a napkin. Robert Montgomery knelt motionless, his mouth slightly open, his eyes wide. For the first time in 4 years, he felt something shift in his chest, something that might have been hope. Sophie reached the napkin tent, her small fingers trembling. She lifted the corner. Claire looked at her, voice so soft only Sophie could hear. The world is too loud sometimes, is it not? It is okay to hide. Sophie's lower lip trembled. She nodded. I have a secret base, Claire whispered. She widened the napkin, creating a small cave of white linen. There is no noise in here. Would you like to come inside? Sophie crawled under the napkin. For 30 seconds, 2 people sat huddled beneath white cloth on the floor of the obsidian room. A billionaire's daughter and a waitress who made $11 an hour, the marble cold beneath them, the silence thick as snow. When Claire slowly lowered the napkin, Sophie was sitting calmly beside her, her breathing steady, her hands relaxed, her eyes clear. Claire stood, brushed off her apron with hands that shook despite her calm exterior. She looked at Robert Montgomery for the first time, really looked at him, saw the exhaustion carved into his face, the desperation, the love that had nowhere to land. She spoke clearly, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. Her voice did not waver despite her racing heart. She is sensory defensive, sir. The crash overloaded her auditory processing. Physical touch during an episode feels like her skin is burning. She needed a reset, not discipline, just quiet and safety. She turned to Victoria. The woman's face had gone rigid with fury and humiliation. And never grab a child in the middle of a panic response. It teaches them that safety is something they have to fight for. Claire turned and walked back toward the kitchen. The silence held for another 5 seconds. Then someone started clapping. A single person in the back of the room. The sound was quickly cut off by a sharp glare from Victoria Sterling. But the damage was done. The power dynamic at table 1 had shifted, irrevocably. Robert Montgomery stared at his daughter. Sophie picked up her water glass with steady hands, drank, set it down, her breathing even. He looked at Victoria, who was furiously typing on her phone, already spinning the story for social media. Then he looked at the kitchen door where the waitress had disappeared. "Who is she?" he asked Gillette quietly. The manager was sweating. "Just a temporary hire, sir." "Claire. She is new. I apologize for her informality. I will have her fired immediately for speaking to your guests in that manner." Robert's eyes narrowed. His voice dropped to something cold and dangerous. "If you fire her, I will buy this building and have you evicted by morning. Do you understand?" Gillette went pale. "Yes, sir. Understood completely, sir. Bring her to me after we finish the meal." The rest of dinner passed in a strange fog. Robert barely tasted his food. He could not stop watching Sophie. Usually after an episode, his daughter would shut down for days, would not eat, would not sleep, would curl into herself like a wounded animal. But tonight she was eating her pasta, twirling the fork with concentration. She even pointed at the chandelier overhead and whispered something too quiet for Robert to hear. But it did not matter. She was speaking, moving, present. It was a miracle. In the kitchen, Claire was hyperventilating near the dish pit. Her coworker Ben stacked dirty plates beside her, shaking his head. "You are insane, completely insane. Do you know who Victoria Sterling is?" Claire scraped leftover lobster into the trash bin. Her hands were shaking. Her name was on the reservation. "I assume she was important. Her father owns half the tabloids in this city. She is going to destroy you. Your face will be on every gossip site by tomorrow. Poor waitress attacks wealthy woman's parenting." "I could not watch them torture that child," Claire said quietly. Ben softened slightly. "I know. I get it. But hope it was worth it. Because Gillette looks ready to have a stroke." 20 minutes later, the summons came. A server appeared at Claire's elbow with a tight smile. "Table 1 wants us to see you." Claire dried her hands on her apron, checked her reflection in the stainless steel refrigerator door. Her dark hair was escaping its bun. Her eyeliner had smudged slightly. She looked exactly like what she was, a woman running on fumes and stubborn hope. She walked out to the dining room with her head high, but her mind calculating. She had $287 in her savings account. Rent was $3,600 overdue. Her mother's heart medication cost $800 a month. If she lost this job tonight, she had maybe 3 days before the landlord started eviction proceedings. Robert Montgomery stood when she approached. He was taller than he looked on the television, broader in the shoulders, the kind of man who filled a room just by existing. "What is your full name?" His voice was quieter now, the desperation replaced by something that might have been curiosity. "Claire Ashworth, sir. Where did you learn that? The napkin technique?" Claire hesitated. The truth felt too personal, too raw, but something in his eyes told her he would know if she lied. "My younger brother, Daniel. He had similar struggles when we were growing up. Our family could not afford the specialists, so I learned to help him survive the world on my own." Robert studied her, really looked at her, saw past the worn uniform and tired eyes to something deeper. A spine made of steel, competence born from necessity. The kind of strength that came from caring for someone vulnerable when no one else would help. "Sophie has gone through 6 nannies in 4 months, he said quietly. "The best agencies in London and New York. Women with degrees and decades of experience. None of them could stop an episode in under an hour." He paused. "Let the weight of that sink in. You did it in 30 seconds. Victoria let out a derisive sound from her seat. "Rob, please. It was a parlor trick. She embarrassed us in front of everyone." Robert's voice went cold. "She saved us. There is a difference." He reached into his suit jacket, pulled out a leather checkbook, wrote something quickly with practiced efficiency, tore out the check and slid it across the white tablecloth. Claire looked down at the number. Her breath caught in her throat. $5,000. It was more money than she made in 4 months of waitressing. It was rent and medication and breathing room. It was the difference between survival and drowning. I cannot accept this, sir. It is too much. Take it. Robert's tone left no room for argument. And take this. He placed a sleek black business card on top of the check. Heavy cardstock with embossed lettering. Robert Montgomery, CEO, Titan Global, and a phone number. My driver will be outside this restaurant tomorrow at 10 in the morning. I want you to come to my estate in Connecticut. We need to discuss a more permanent arrangement. Victoria's voice rose to a near shriek. Rob, you cannot be serious. She is a waitress. She probably does not even have a college degree. Claire's hand hovered over the check. Every instinct screamed at her to walk away, to preserve what little dignity she had left, to not become another charity case for a billionaire with a savior complex. But she thought of her mother, Ruth Ashworth, 68 years old, congestive heart failure, waiting at home in their cramped apartment in Queens, rationing her medication because they could not afford to refill the prescription early. She thought of Daniel, her baby brother who would always need more help than she could provide. She thought of the eviction notice she knew was coming, had felt it approaching like storm clouds on the horizon. Claire picked up the check, folded it carefully, met Robert Montgomery's eyes. Thank you, sir. She looked down at Sophie. The small girl was coloring on a paper placemat now, her movements calm and focused. Claire smiled. Goodbye, Sophie. Remember the tent trick. It works anytime the world gets too loud. Sophie looked up, gave a tiny shy wave. The smallest smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. As Claire walked away, she felt Victoria Sterling's eyes burning holes into her back, felt the weight of that stare like a physical threat. She knew with absolute certainty that the $5,000 was not just a tip. It was a declaration of war. Claire took the subway home that night, the check folded carefully in her apron pocket, the business card tucked into her phone case. She emerged at the Astoria Boulevard station just after midnight, walked 4 blocks through streets that smelled like garbage and exhaust in the particular loneliness of New York after dark. The apartment building was a walk-up, 5 floors, no elevator. The hallway lights flickered with the rhythm of a dying heartbeat. Someone's television blared through thin walls. A baby cried 2 doors down. Home. Claire unlocked 3 deadbolts and pushed open the door to apartment 4C, 600 square feet. 1 bedroom that had been divided with a curtain to create a second sleeping space. Pipes that rattled. A radiator that hissed but produced little heat. Her mother sat in the old armchair by the window, still awake despite the hour. Ruth Ashworth looked smaller than she had a year ago, thinner. The oxygen concentrator hummed beside her, clear tubing running to her nose. But her eyes were sharp as ever. Librarian's eyes that missed nothing. You are home late, she said quietly. Big tip tonight, Claire lied. Set her purse down on the kitchen counter. Claire Grace Ashworth, you are a terrible liar. What happened? Claire pulled out the check, handed it to her mother without a word. Ruth stared at the number for a long moment. Her hands began to shake. Oh, baby, what did you do? I helped someone. Claire collapsed onto the worn couch. A little girl who was having a sensory meltdown. I could not watch them make it worse. Who wrote this check? His name is Robert Montgomery. He owns Titan Global. Ruth looked up sharply. The furniture company? The billionaire? Apparently. And he just gave you $5,000 for helping his daughter? Claire pulled out the business card, showed it to her mother. And he wants me to come to his estate tomorrow morning to discuss a permanent position. Ruth set down the check with trembling fingers. Honey, this is not normal. Rich men do not hand out this kind of money to strangers. What does he want from you? I think he wants me to help his daughter. She has sensory processing issues, like Daniel did. I know how to manage it. Ruth studied her daughter's face for a long moment. The silence stretched between them, filled with all the things they did not say, all the years of struggle, all the doors that had closed in their faces, all the times they had scraped by on hope and determination. Finally, Ruth spoke. This could be the answer to our prayers, or it could be a trap, I know. What does your gut tell you? Claire thought about Robert Montgomery's face, the exhaustion, the desperate love for his daughter, the way he had looked at Sophie like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. I think he is a father who ran out of options. And I think his daughter needs someone who understands her, Not someone with a degree, someone with experience. Ruth nodded slowly. Then you should go. But be careful. Very careful. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Claire noticed the stack of envelopes on the kitchen table. The red stamps. Final notice. Past due. Disconnection warning. Mom, did something happen today? Ruth sighed. Mr. Walsh came by this afternoon. The landlord. He said we are 2 months behind on rent. He needs payment by Friday or he starts eviction proceedings. Claire felt her chest tighten. I can pay him now with this check. Ruth shook her head. No, you use that money for what comes next. If you take this job, you will need to look presentable. Need clothes, transportation. You cannot show up to a billionaire's estate looking like you just crawled out of a subway station. But if we do not pay rent, we will figure it out. We always do. Claire wanted to argue. Wanted to take the check straight to the bank in the morning and pay off everything they owed. But her mother was right. If this job was real, if it could change their lives, she needed to invest in the possibility. She fell asleep that night on the couch, too exhausted to pull out the bed. She dreamed of napkin tents and small frightened girls and a man with kind eyes who looked like he had forgotten how to smile. She woke to pounding on the door. 6:30 in the morning, gray light filtering through the thin curtains. The pounding continued, urgent, demanding. Claire stumbled to the door, peered through the peephole. Mr. Walsh stood in the hallway, their landlord, a man in his 50s with kind eyes and an apologetic expression that made Claire's stomach drop. She opened the door. Mr. Walsh, I know we are behind on rent, but I have the money now. I can pay you today. He held up a hand, cut hers off gently. I am sorry, Claire, this is not about the rent. He handed her a folded document, official looking, legal letterhead, eviction notice, effective immediately, 24 hours to vacate the premises. Claire stared at the paper. Her brain could not process the words. What? No, I told you, I have the money right now. Mr. Walsh looked genuinely pained. It is not about the rent anymore. I got a call this morning from the city health inspector and from the building authority. They said they found code violations, specifically in your unit. What violations? Electrical, plumbing, structural concerns. They threatened to condemn the entire building if you are not out within 24 hours. Claire felt the floor tilt beneath her feet. That is impossible. This apartment was fine yesterday, I know. Mr. Walsh lowered his voice, looked around the hallway like he was afraid of being overheard. Listen, between you and me, the inspector knew your name. He mentioned you specifically before I even told him which unit. Someone called this in, someone with enough pull to get the city to act immediately. Claire's blood ran cold. Who? I do not know, but whoever it was, they want you gone, and they have the power to make it happen. He handed her the eviction notice. I am truly sorry. You and your mother have been good tenants, but I cannot fight City Hall. He walked away, left Claire standing in the doorway holding a piece of paper that had just made her homeless. She closed the door, leaned against it. Her mind raced. Someone powerful wanted her gone. Someone who knew her name. Someone who could mobilize city agencies with a phone call. Victoria Sterling. It had to be. The woman had been furious last night, humiliated in front of 200 witnesses. And Claire had embarrassed her, called out her cruel treatment of Sophie in front of New York's elite. This was revenge. Ruth emerged from the bedroom, saw Claire's face. What happened? We are being evicted. 24 hours. The older woman's hand went to her chest. Her breathing quickened. The oxygen concentrator hummed louder as she pulled in air. Claire moved quickly, helped her mother sit down, checked her pulse. It was racing but steady. Mom, breathe, slow and steady. We will figure this out. But even as she said it, Claire felt panic rising in her own chest. Where would they go? Shelters were full this time of year. Hotels were impossible on their budget. Friends had their own struggles. Her phone buzzed. A text message from an unknown number. Do not come in today. You are fired. Do not use me as a reference. Gillette. Claire stared at the screen. 24 hours. She had gone from employed with a home to unemployed and homeless in less than 24 hours. She looked at the business card on the kitchen table. Robert Montgomery, CEO, Titan Global. His driver would be here at 10 in the morning. This was not a job interview anymore. This was a lifeboat, and Claire was drowning. She took a shower in water that never got quite hot enough, put on her best outfit, a simple navy dress that was 5 years old but still presentable, black flats with worn soles. She did her makeup carefully, tried to hide the dark circles under her eyes. The fear. Ruth watched from the armchair. You do not have to do this. We can find another way. There is no other way, Mom. Claire's voice came out harder than she intended. I am sorry, but this is it. This is the only option we have left. Then you go, you take this chance, but promise me something. What? Do not lose yourself trying to save us. That little girl needs help, but she does not need you to sacrifice everything. Be careful with your heart. Claire nodded, kissed her mother's forehead. I will be back tonight with good news, I promise. At 9:45, she stood on the curb outside their building. The morning was cold. Gray clouds promised snow. She clutched her small purse. Inside was her ID, the business card, business, her mother's medication list, and the weight of everything they had left to lose. At exactly 10 o'clock, a black Rolls-Royce pulled up to the curb. The window rolled down. A man in a driver's uniform looked at her. Miss Ashworth? Yes, Mr. Montgomery is waiting. Claire climbed into the back seat. The leather was soft as butter. The interior smelled like expensive cologne and new money. As the car pulled away from the curb, she glanced back at her building, saw a black SUV parked half a block down. A man sat in the driver's seat, watching, talking on a phone. She felt a chill run down her spine. This was not just a job interview. She was walking into something bigger, something dangerous. A world where people could destroy your life with a phone call, where money moved like an invisible current, reshaping everything it touched. But what choice did she have? The Rolls-Royce merged into traffic, headed north, toward Connecticut, toward an estate called Blackwood, toward a man who had lost his wife and a daughter who had lost her voice, in a future that Claire could not begin to imagine. She leaned back against the leather seat, closed her eyes, and prayed that she was strong enough for whatever came next. The drive to Connecticut took 45 minutes but felt like crossing into another country. Manhattan's concrete towers gave way to suburbs, then to estates hidden behind stone walls and iron gates. Trees lined the road like sentinels. The November sky hung low and gray, threatening snow that would not come for hours yet. Claire watched the world transform through tinted windows. Each mile took her further from everything she knew, further from the cramped apartment and rattling pipes and the constant calculation of which bill to pay first. She was entering a realm where people did not worry about money. They worried about legacy, about power, about protecting what they had built from those who might want to take it. The Rolls-Royce turned onto a private road. Gravel crunched under expensive tires. The driveway stretched ahead for what looked like a mile, perfectly manicured despite the coming winter. Bare trees on either side created a tunnel of skeletal branches. Then the house appeared. Blackwood Estate. It was not a house. It was a statement. French chateau architecture transplanted to New England soil. Limestone facade 3 stories high. Dozens of windows reflecting the gray sky like blank eyes. Turrets at each corner. A massive oak door that looked like it had been stolen from a medieval castle. Beautiful and cold and utterly intimidating. The car stopped at the front entrance. The driver opened Claire's door. She stepped out onto gravel that had probably been raked that morning. The air smelled different here. Clean, pine and wood smoke and money. Before she could take another breath, the oak door swung open. A man emerged. Older, maybe 65. British accent written into every line of his posture before he even spoke. Dressed in a black suit that looked like it had been starched along with his spine. Silver hair combed with military precision. Miss Ashworth, his voice could have cut glass. Follow me. Mr. Montgomery is waiting in the library. He turned without checking to see if she followed. Claire hurried after him. You are late, he said over his shoulder. The driver picked me up at 10 exactly, Claire replied. Her voice sounded small in the vast entryway. Mr. Montgomery's time is currency, the man said. Do not waste it. I am James Calloway. I manage this household. You will address me as Mr. Calloway. They walked through halls that felt more like museum corridors than a home. Portraits lined the walls. Stern-faced men and women in clothes from different eras. All of them seemed to stare down at Claire with identical expressions of judgment. The house was silent. No music, no television, no sound of a child playing or laughing, just the echo of their footsteps on marble floors. Claire noticed something else. The family photos on small tables between the portraits all stopped at the same point in time, 4 years ago, maybe 5. A beautiful woman with dark hair appeared in many of them, smiling, vibrant, holding a small child, and then nothing. The timeline simply ended. Caroline, Claire thought, Robert's wife, the one who died. This house had frozen the moment she left it. They reached a set of double doors, mahogany, carved with intricate patterns. Mr. Calloway pushed them open without knocking. Miss Ashworth, he announced. Claire stepped into the library and her breath caught. The room was massive, 2 stories high, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves on every wall, filled with leather-bound volumes that looked like they had never been opened. A fireplace large enough to stand in, Persian rugs that probably cost more than Claire would earn in a lifetime. And in the center, a desk the size of a small car. Behind the desk sat Robert Montgomery. He looked different in daylight, more tired, the lines around his eyes deeper, but also more human somehow. Less like the polished CEO from the restaurant and more like a man carrying weight he could not put down. He stood when Claire entered. That surprised her. Men like him usually did not stand for women like her, but he was not alone. Victoria Sterling perched on a leather sofa near the fireplace, red dress replaced by a cream-colored suit that probably cost $5,000. Her makeup perfect, her smile sharp as a blade. She held a small espresso cup and watched Claire with the intensity of a cat watching a mouse. And standing in a line in front of Robert's desk were 3 other women, all in their 40s or 50s, all wearing crisp navy suits, hair pulled back in identical tight buns, each holding a leather portfolio. They looked like soldiers awaiting inspection. Claire looked down at her simple navy dress and worn flats, felt woefully underprepared. This was not an interview. This was a competition, and she had showed up to a war with a butter knife. Robert gestured to the line. "Take your place, Miss Ashworth." Claire moved to stand beside the 3rd woman. The woman smelled like antiseptic and disapproval. "This is a practical interview," Robert said. He looked exhausted. Dark circles under his eyes suggested he had not slept. "Sophie is currently in the solarium. She has refused to come out for breakfast. She has refused to get dressed. In 2 hours, the board of directors is arriving for a luncheon here at the estate. Sophie must be presentable and calm. Each of you will have 10 minutes to accomplish this." The first woman stepped forward, mid-50s, severe expression. She spoke with a clipped accent that suggested expensive European schools. "I am Dr. Gable. I have handled behavioral challenges for the Swedish royal family. This will be manageable." She marched out of the library with the confidence of someone who had never failed at anything. 5 minutes later, screaming echoed down the marble hallways. The same terrifying sound from the restaurant. High-pitched, desperate. The sound of a nervous system shattering. Dr. Gable returned, her hair slightly askew, face flushed, a red mark on her hand that looked suspiciously like teeth marks. "The child bit me," she said tightly. "I recommend psychiatric evaluation and possible medication to manage her aggression." "Next," Robert said. His voice had gone completely flat. The second woman tried, younger, maybe 40. She lasted 3 minutes before returning. "She is throwing things. Porcelain figurines. It is unsafe. I cannot work in that environment." The third woman looked at the others with visible disdain. "Amateurs," she muttered. She was older. Gray hair, stern face, the kind of woman who looked like she ate nails for breakfast. She lasted 8 minutes. When she returned, she was soaking wet, her expensive suit dripping, mascara running, fury radiating from every pore. "That child turned a garden hose on me. She does not need a nanny. She needs a residential treatment facility for the criminally disturbed." Robert's jaw clenched. A muscle ticked near his temple. His hands gripped the edge of his desk hard enough that his knuckles went white. "Get out." His voice was deadly quiet. "All of you, you will be compensated for your time and travel. Leave." Now the 3 women filed out, muttering to each other, casting glances at Claire that mixed pity and satisfaction. She was next. And if three highly qualified professionals had failed, what chance did a waitress have? Victoria set down her espresso cup. The sound echoed in the sudden silence. She smiled at Claire, a smile with no warmth in it whatsoever. Your turn, waitress. Do try not to get bitten or drowned, though I suspect you will fail at both. Claire ignored her. She set her small purse on a chair. Then she did something that made Victoria's eyebrows rise. She took off her shoes. What are you doing? Victoria asked. Her nose wrinkled slightly. Claire looked at Robert. Shoes on marble floors create a clicking sound. Hard surfaces create echoes. If Sophie is in a heightened sensory state, the sound of heels on stone will register like gunfire. I am going to approach as quietly as possible, like a ghost, not an invasion. Robert stared at her for a moment. Then he stood. I want to watch. Victoria stood as well. Oh, this I must see. Claire walked through the hallways in her stockinged feet. Silent, Robert and Victoria followed several paces behind. The house felt even larger and emptier without the sound of footsteps to fill it. They reached the solarium at the east end of the estate, glass walls on three sides, filled with exotic plants that created a humid jungle inside the winter mansion. The air was thick, warm, the smell of earth and green things growing. In the corner, behind a massive fern, Claire could see a small shape huddled on the tile floor. Sophie. She was clutching a porcelain doll, the same one from the restaurant. Her breathing was ragged, irregular. A garden hose lay nearby, still dripping water onto the tiles, evidence of the third candidate's failure. Claire did not approach the fern, did not call Sophie's name, did not try to make eye contact. She walked to the center of the solarium and sat down on the tile floor, cross-legged, her back to Sophie. From her pocket, she pulled out a small notepad and a pen, the kind waitresses used to take orders. She opened to a blank page, and she started to draw. Scratch, scratch, scratch. The rhythmic sound cut through the silence. Regular, predictable, not threatening. Behind the fern, Sophie stopped crying. The change was subtle but immediate. Her ragged breathing hitched, smoothed slightly. She was listening. Claire tore out the page, folded it carefully, not looking at what she had drawn, just folding with practiced efficiency, creating something three-dimensional from flat paper. A paper airplane. She threw it, not at Sophie, not toward the fern, straight up into the air. The airplane looped, caught an air current from the heating vent, sailed in a lazy arc, and landed on a broad monstera leaf 10 feet away. Claire drew another picture, folded it, threw it. This one landed closer to the fern, close enough that Sophie could reach it without leaving her hiding spot. From the doorway, Victoria whispered to Robert, "She is playing with trash. This is absurd." Robert held up a hand. Shh. Sophie's small hand emerged from behind the fern, fingers pale and trembling. She reached out, grabbed the paper airplane, pulled it back into her hiding spot. 10 seconds of silence. Then Sophie unfolded it. Claire had drawn a crude stick figure, a little girl, but the girl was not alone. She was fighting a dragon, and the dragon was made of sound waves. Visual representations of noise, chaotic scribbles and sharp lines that looked like they could cut. Sophie stared at the drawing. Her breathing slowed another degree. Claire threw a third airplane. This one landed directly in Sophie's lap. She unfolded it immediately. The same stick figure girl, still fighting the noise dragon. But now there was another figure, a woman standing beside the girl, holding up an umbrella. The umbrella was creating a dome of safety. Under it, the noise waves could not reach. The girl was safe. Sophie looked up from the drawing, looked at Claire's back. The strange woman sitting in the middle of the floor, not demanding anything, not grabbing, not yelling, just sitting, drawing, offering safety without conditions. Sophie stood up. She walked slowly across the solarium, each step careful, testing. She sat down directly behind Claire, back to back, their spine touching through fabric. The contact made Claire smile. She did not turn around, did not break the moment. "The hose was because she yelled at me," Sophie whispered. Her voice was so quiet it was almost not there. Rusty from disuse. I know, Claire whispered back, still not turning. Yelling is the worst thing when your ears already hurt. I do not want to wear the blue dress, Sophie said. A bit louder now, more certain. It scratches my neck. The tag feels like knives, Claire nodded, though Sophie could not see it. What if we wear the white dress instead, and we turn it inside out so the tag and seams do not touch your skin? Silence. Sophie processing this. Inside out? Like it is broken? No, Claire kept her voice gentle. Calm, like it is exclusive. A fashion secret. Very fancy people do it all the time. Sophie giggled. A tiny sound. Rusty like an old hinge finally moving. But real. Genuine. Okay, we can try that. Claire stood, slowly, gave Sophie time to move if she wanted to. But the little girl did not move away. She looked up at Claire, really looked at her, studying her face like she was trying to memorize it. Claire held out her hand, not grabbing, just offering. Sophie took it. They walked out of the solarium together, hand in hand, past the stunned Robert Montgomery and the furious Victoria Sterling, without a word. As they passed, Claire spoke to Robert without stopping. We are going to get dressed now. And Mr. Montgomery, that blue dress you mentioned, it is made of synthetic tulle. The texture is essentially sandpaper for a child with sensory processing disorder. I recommend burning it. Robert stood frozen, watching his daughter walk away holding the hand of a stranger. For the first time in 4 years, Sophie was calm after an episode. Not shut down, not catatonic, just calm, present, safe. He let out a breath he felt like he had been holding since his wife died. Victoria's face had gone rigid. You cannot be serious about hiring her. Robert turned to look at her, his expression unreadable. She is the first person Sophie has not screamed at in 6 months. She is hired. You cannot hire her, Victoria insisted, her voice rising, losing the polished control. You know nothing about this woman. She could be anyone. A con artist, a stalker, someone dangerous. She is someone who helped my daughter. That is enough. Victoria's hand dove into her designer clutch. She pulled out a folded document, slapped it against Robert's chest hard enough to make a sound. I did a background check this morning, she said. Her smile was triumphant. Vicious. Read it. Robert unfolded the paper. His face remained neutral, but his eyes moved quickly. Scanning, absorbing. It was a financial report. Credit check. Public records search. Everything about Claire Ashworth laid bare in bullet points and numbers. Evicted this morning from her apartment in Queens. Final notice. Code violations. $47,000 in combined debt. Student loans from a nursing program she dropped out of. Medical bills from her mother's ongoing treatment. 2 months behind on rent before the eviction. Currently unemployed as of last night. Robert looked up from the paper. She was evicted this morning? Victoria nodded. Hours before she arrived here. She has no address, no home. Her mother is sick and uninsured. She is destitute, Rob. Desperate. She stepped closer, lowered her voice to something almost sympathetic. Do you not see? She is not here because she cares about Sophie. She is here because she needs a roof over her head. This is survival. You are being conned by someone with nothing to lose. Robert stared at the document, at the numbers that told the story of a woman drowning. He thought about the worn shoes, the carefully maintained composure, the way Claire had not mentioned any of this, had not begged or explained or made excuses. She had simply helped his daughter. Is this why you had her evicted? He asked quietly. Victoria blinked. What? The eviction happened this morning, after she helped Sophie last night, after she embarrassed you in front of 200 witnesses. Did you make a phone call, Victoria? Did you use your father's connections to destroy her housing? Victoria's face flickered. Just for a second. Guilt and rage warring beneath the surface. I have no idea what you are implying. Robert folded the paper, set it on his desk. His decision was made. 30 minutes later, Claire returned to the library. Sophie walked beside her. The little girl was dressed in a white cotton dress. Simple, soft, and yes, turned inside out. Claire had cleverly pinned a silk sash around the waist to hide the exposed seams. It looked intentional, almost fashionable. Sophie was calm, her hair brushed, her face clean. She carried a coloring book under one arm and moved to sit in a leather chair by the window. She opened the book and began to color. Quiet, content. "She is ready for your luncheon," Claire said to Robert. Robert held up the financial report. "The eviction notice. Is this true? Are you homeless as of this morning?" Claire froze. The color drained from her face. She looked at Victoria. The woman's smile was pure poison. "Yes," Claire said. She straightened her spine, refusing to look ashamed. "My landlord evicted us this morning. He claimed there were code violations, but I suspect he was pressured by someone with influence." She looked directly at Victoria as she said it. "That does not change how I treat your daughter, Mr. Montgomery. I need this job, desperately, which means I will work harder than anyone else you could possibly hire. Because I have everything to lose." The room fell silent. Even Sophie looked up from her coloring, watching the adults with wide eyes. Victoria waited for the explosion. Robert Montgomery was known for hating liars, for cutting people out of his life at the first sign of deception. She waited for him to throw the waitress out, to call security, to end this farce. Robert tore the eviction notice in half. "The position is live in," he said. His voice was quiet but firm. "The East Wing has a guest suite, 2 bedrooms. Full bathroom. You and your mother can move in today. I will send a truck to collect whatever belongings you have." Victoria's espresso cup slipped from her fingers. It shattered on the marble floor. Brown liquid spread across white stone like blood. "Rob," she gasped, "you cannot be serious. You are moving her mother in as well? You know nothing about these people." "I know Sophie is calm," Robert said. He did not raise his voice. Did not need to. "I know that 3 professionals with decades of experience failed in minutes. And I know that Claire succeeded in seconds. That is what I know, and that is enough." He turned to Claire, his expression serious, almost stern. "This is a trial period. 1 week. If Sophie has another major episode, if I discover you have lied to me about anything, if I sense for even a moment that you are using my daughter's vulnerability for personal gain, you will be removed from this estate immediately, and I will ensure you never work in this city again. Do you understand?" Claire's heart pounded against her ribs. She understood exactly what he was saying. This was not kindness. This was a transaction. Help his daughter or lose everything. "I understand," she said. Her voice did not shake. "Good." Robert sat back down at his desk, dismissing them. "Mr. Calloway will show you to your rooms. Your belongings will arrive this afternoon." Claire turned to leave. Sophie hopped down from her chair and took Claire's hand without being asked. They walked to the door together. As they left, Claire heard Victoria's voice behind them, low and venomous. "This is a mistake, Rob, a terrible mistake. And when it all falls apart, do not say I did not warn you." Robert did not answer. Claire and Sophie walked through the marble halls. Mr. Calloway appeared as if summoned and led them to the East Wing. The guest suite was larger than Claire's entire apartment had been. Hardwood floors, crown molding, windows that looked out over grounds that seemed to stretch forever. 2 bedrooms connected by a sitting room, a bathroom with a clawfoot tub, furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum. "Your mother's room," Mr. Calloway said, gesturing to the first bedroom. "Medical equipment will be delivered within the hour. A visiting nurse has been arranged, 3 times per week to start. Meals will be brought to you, or you may eat in the main kitchen, not the formal dining room. That is reserved for Mr. Montgomery and his guests." He looked at Claire with an expression that might have been sympathy, might have been pity. "You have been given a remarkable opportunity, Miss Ashworth. Do not squander it." He left them alone. Sophie tugged on Claire's hand. "Can we make paper airplanes now?" Claire looked down at the small girl, at the hope in her eyes, the trust, the fragile beginning of something that might become safety if Claire could just hold on long enough. "Yes," she said, "we can make as many as you want." They sat on the floor of the sitting room. Claire showed Sophie how to fold, how to create wings from flat paper, how to make something that could fly from something that was meant to stay still. Outside the windows, snow finally began to fall, small flakes at first, then heavier, covering the grounds in white, erasing the boundaries between earth and sky. In the main house, Victoria Sterling stood at a window in the library, watching the snow, her phone pressed to her ear. "It did not work," she said quietly. "The eviction did not scare her off. She is moving in. Today." The voice on the other end said something Claire could not hear. Victoria's expression hardened. Then we escalate. I want her gone within the month. I do not care what it costs. Find her weak points and exploit them. Everyone has a breaking point. She ended the call, looked out at the falling snow. Somewhere in the East Wing, a waitress was playing with paper airplanes, building trust with a little girl who should have been Victoria's ticket to becoming Mrs. Robert Montgomery. Victoria had spent 3 years positioning herself, 3 years of board meetings and charity galas and carefully calculated intimacy. She had invested too much to lose now, to lose to a woman with worn shoes and a kind heart. This was not over. It was just beginning. In the East Wing, Sophie fell asleep on the couch, her head resting against Claire's shoulder. The paper airplanes scattered around them like fallen birds. Claire sat very still, afraid to move, afraid to wake the child, afraid to break whatever spell had made this moment possible. Through the window, she could see the main house, lights glowing in windows, shadows moving behind glass. One shadow stood very still, watching, Robert Montgomery in his office, looking out at the guest wing, at the woman who had walked into his life with nothing but competence and courage, the woman who had given his daughter something no amount of money could buy. Peace. He did not know her, did not trust her, but he trusted what he had seen. The way Sophie had taken her hand, the way his daughter had laughed. It had been 4 years since he heard that sound. 4 years since Caroline died and took all the light with her. He turned away from the window, sat at his desk, tried to focus on work, but his mind kept drifting to the East Wing, to the question of whether he had just made the best decision of his life or the worst. Only time would tell. And time, he had learned, was the cruelest judge of all. The snow fell heavier now, covering Blackwood Estate in silence. In the morning, everything would look clean and new, fresh, like the past had been erased and the future could be anything. But under the snow, the ground was still the same, still frozen, still waiting for spring to come and reveal what had been buried all winter long. The moving truck arrived at 3 in the afternoon. 2 men carried boxes up the marble steps while Mr. Calloway supervised with the expression of someone watching barbarians storm the gates. Everything Claire and Ruth owned fit into 11 cardboard boxes: clothes, books, medical supplies, a lifetime compressed into containers that could be stacked in a corner. Ruth Ashworth arrived in a medical transport van. She emerged slowly, oxygen tank in hand, looking impossibly small against the backdrop of Blackwood Estate. Her eyes widened as she took in the limestone facade, the manicured grounds, the sheer scale of wealth that had swallowed her daughter whole. "Mom," Claire said, hurrying down the steps to help her, "welcome to our new home." "Baby girl," Ruth whispered, "this is not a home. This is a palace. What have you gotten us into?" Claire did not have an answer for that. They settled Ruth into the first bedroom. The medical equipment arrived within the hour as promised. A hospital bed, monitors, an oxygen concentrator that hummed quietly in the corner. A visiting nurse named Grace Chen appeared at 5 o'clock, 45 years old, efficient smile, kind eyes that missed nothing. She checked Ruth's vitals, listened to her heart, made notes on a tablet. "Mrs. Ashworth, your ejection fraction is concerning. Has your cardiologist discussed valve replacement surgery?" Ruth's hands trembled slightly. "He mentioned it, said it would cost about $60,000 after insurance." Grace looked at Claire, then back to Ruth. "Mr. Montgomery has authorized full medical coverage for you as part of your daughter's employment package. I will schedule a consultation with the best cardiac surgeon in Connecticut. We will get you well." After Grace left, Ruth sat on the edge of the hospital bed and wept. Not from sadness, from relief so profound it hurt. She had been rationing her medication for 2 years, skipping doses to make the bottles last longer, living in constant fear that her heart would give out before Claire could afford the surgery that might save her. Now a stranger was offering salvation. A billionaire who owed them nothing had opened a door Ruth had thought was sealed forever. Claire knelt beside her mother, held her shaking hands. "We are going to be okay, Mom. For the first time in years, we are going to be okay." But even as she said it, Claire felt the weight of debt settling onto her shoulders. Not financial debt, moral debt, the kind that came from accepting help you could never repay. the kind that made you wonder what price you would eventually be asked to pay. The first week passed in a strange dream. Sophie attached herself to Claire like a shadow, followed her from room to room, sat quietly while Claire unpacked, brought her drawings to show her. Small offerings of trust from a child who had learned not to trust easily. They established a routine, mornings in the kitchen making breakfast together. Sophie liked predictability, needed it. So Claire created a visual schedule with pictures: breakfast, art time, outdoor walk, lunch, quiet reading, sensory play, dinner, bath, bed. Sophie relaxed into the structure like a flower opening to sun. She still did not speak much, a few words here and there, whispered observations, but she communicated in other ways, through drawings, through the careful placement of objects, through the way she would take Claire's hand and lead her to something she wanted to show her. Claire learned to read the language. Robert watched from doorways. Claire would catch glimpses of him, standing in the hall, observing, his expression unreadable. He worked from home most days now. Claimed it was more convenient, but Claire suspected he could not bear to be away from Sophie, could not stop watching to see if this fragile piece would shatter. They spoke little. Professional exchanges. Mr. Montgomery, Sophie would like to walk in the garden. Miss Ashworth, thank you for the update. A dance of formality that kept proper distance between employer and employee. But sometimes Claire would look up and find him watching her with an expression she could not name, something that looked almost like grief, or gratitude, or the terrible combination of both. Victoria appeared twice in that first week, both times announced, both times creating disruption like a stone thrown into still water. The first time she arrived with shopping bags, designer clothes for Sophie, stiff fabrics, scratchy lace, torture devices disguised as children's fashion. Sophie needs to look appropriate, Victoria announced. She cannot wear cotton dresses turned inside out to the charity events. Claire intercepted the bags before Sophie could see them. Thank you, Miss Sterling, but Sophie's sensory issues require specific fabrics. These would cause her significant distress. Victoria's smile could have cut glass. How convenient. The child gets exactly what she wants because you coddle her disability. It is not coddling to acknowledge her neurological differences. It is basic decency. The second visit, Victoria brought a child psychologist, Dr. Helena Marsh, severe woman in her 60s. She watched Sophie color for 15 minutes, made notes, spoke to Sophie in loud, condescending tones, as if the child were deaf rather than selectively verbal. She needs intensive behavioral therapy, Dr. Marsh announced to Robert. At least 20 hours per week. We need to extinguish these avoidance behaviors before they become permanent. Claire bit her tongue, watched Sophie shrink into herself at the harsh evaluation. After they left, Sophie would not come out of her closet fort for 3 hours. Claire sat outside the door, did not coax, did not cajole, just sat, present, safe. Eventually Sophie emerged, crawled into Claire's lap without a word. They sat together on the floor until Sophie's breathing returned to normal. Robert found them there. His face darkened when Claire explained what had happened. Victoria will not bring anyone else to evaluate Sophie, he said quietly. I apologize. I should have consulted you first. It was the first crack in the professional facade, the first acknowledgement that Claire was not just an employee. She was Sophie's advocate, her protector. On the 8th day, Claire met William Montgomery. She was reading to Sophie in the library when an older man shuffled in. 75, silver hair, kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He moved slowly but with dignity, a cane in his right hand. He wore a cardigan sweater that looked soft from years of washing. House shoes instead of formal footwear. He stopped when he saw them, smiled. So you are the miracle worker. I have been hoping to meet you. Claire stood. Sophie pressed against her side, wary of strangers. I am William Montgomery, the man said. Robert's father, Sophie's utterly devoted grandfather. And you must be Claire. He offered his hand. Claire shook it. His grip was still strong despite his age. Sophie, William said gently, may I sit with you and listen to the story? Sophie looked up at Claire, a question in her eyes. Claire nodded. It is okay, sweetheart. This is your grandpa. Sophie considered this, then nodded, went back to her spot on the couch. William sat in the leather armchair nearby, settled in with a contented sigh. Claire resumed reading. Alice in Wonderland, Sophie's current favorite. After a chapter, William spoke again. You have a lovely reading voice, my dear. Sophie seems quite comfortable with you. She is a remarkable child, Claire said. She just needs patience. So does my son. William's eyes crinkled with gentle humor. He has been running from his grief for 4 years. Perhaps you can help him learn to sit still with it. I am here for Sophie, sir. William smiled. Of course you are. But sometimes helping the child means healing the parent as well. Robert has forgotten how to live. He only knows how to survive. There is a difference, he stood, touched Sophie's hair with grandfatherly affection. Thank you for coming into our lives, Claire. You cannot know how much light you have already brought to this house. After he left, Sophie looked at Claire. I like Grandpa William, she whispered. He does not yell. Claire's heart clenched. How many people in this child's life yelled at her? How many treated her neurodiversity as a behavior problem rather than a different way of experiencing the world? I like him too, Claire said. He seems very kind. Mama liked him, Sophie said. Then her face closed. She did not speak again for the rest of the afternoon. It was the first time Sophie had mentioned her mother. Claire filed the information away carefully, like a puzzle piece she might need later. The sabotage started small. In the second week, Sophie's noise-canceling headphones disappeared. Claire found them 3 days later in the kitchen dishwasher. Ruined, the electronics fried, the cushions warped. The housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, apologized profusely. I do not know how they got there. I would never put electronics in the dishwasher. Claire believed her. Someone else had placed them there. Someone who wanted Sophie to have an episode, who wanted Claire to fail. She built a pillow fort in Sophie's closet instead, a quiet cave where Sophie could retreat when the world became too loud. It worked. Sophie loved it, called it her secret planet. One crisis averted. In the third week, the kitchen served lunch with mushrooms in the sauce. Mushrooms that Sophie's dietary restrictions specifically prohibited. The texture triggered Sophie's gag reflex. She started to panic. Claire intercepted the plate before Sophie could take a bite. She found the cook in the kitchen, a woman who had worked at Blackwood for 15 years, who knew Sophie's restrictions by heart. I am so sorry, the cook said. Her face was pale, distressed. Miss Sterling called this morning, said Mr. Montgomery had approved a menu change. I should have checked with you first. Claire's hands clenched into fists. It is not your fault. She made Sophie a safe meal, pasta with olive oil and salt. Simple, predictable. While Sophie ate, Claire taught her a game. Food scientist. They examined each bite before eating, looked for textures that might be uncomfortable, turned anxiety into curiosity. Another crisis averted, but Claire was getting tired. The constant vigilance, the knowledge that someone was actively working against her, against Sophie. It felt like trying to build a house while someone else kept pulling out the foundation. She found Robert in his office late one night, after Sophie had gone to bed, after Ruth had fallen asleep with the oxygen concentrator humming its lullaby. Claire knocked on the open door. Mr. Montgomery, may I speak with you? He looked up from his laptop. Tired. Always so tired. Of course. Please come in. She told him about the headphones, the food, the pattern of small sabotages designed to trigger Sophie and make Claire look incompetent. I cannot prove it, Claire said, but I believe Victoria is behind this. She wants me gone. Robert leaned back in his chair, studied Claire for a long moment. I know, he said quietly. You know, Victoria has been my chief operating officer for 15 years. We went to business school together. She is brilliant at her job, but she has also been positioning herself to become more than my business partner. She expected to become my wife, and I ruined that by arriving. You did not ruin anything that was real. Robert's voice was gentle. I never encouraged Victoria's expectations, but I also never explicitly shut them down. That was cowardly of me. I let her believe something might develop because it was easier than confronting the truth. What truth? That I am not capable of loving anyone the way I love Caroline. Robert looked away, out the window at the dark grounds. My wife has been dead for 4 years, and I still feel married. Still feel like I am betraying her every time I consider moving forward. Sophie needs you to move forward, Claire said softly. I know. Robert's voice cracked slightly, but knowing and doing are very different things. They sat in silence for a moment, the kind of silence that felt less lonely than being alone. I will handle Victoria, Robert said finally, but I cannot fire her without cause. She is too valuable to the company. The board would revolt, I understand. In the meantime, be careful, Claire. Victoria is not just jealous. She is strategic, and she does not lose gracefully. Claire left him there, surrounded by paperwork and grief and the weight of responsibilities he carried alone. The fourth week brought early December, and with it came the announcement that made Claire's stomach drop: the Titan Global Annual Charity Gala, to be held at Blackwood Estate, 500 guests, New York's elite, investors, board members, press, and Sophie was expected to make an appearance. Robert called Claire into his office to discuss it, his face apologetic before he even spoke. I know this is asking a lot, he said, but the board insists. After the restaurant incident, they need to see that Sophie is well adjusted, that my personal life is not affecting my ability to lead the company. How long does she need to appear? 15 minutes, 20 at most, walk down the grand staircase, greet a few key people, then she can retreat. Claire thought about Sophie's progress, how far she had come, how fragile that progress still was. We can do it, she said, but we need to prepare. Practice. And Sophie needs to wear something comfortable, not formal wear that will trigger her sensory issues. Agreed. Robert looked relieved. Whatever you think is best. Claire spent the next 2 weeks preparing Sophie. They practiced walking down the main staircase, practiced greeting imaginary guests, created a script of simple phrases Sophie could use. Hello. Thank you for coming. Nice to meet you. Sophie was nervous but willing. She trusted Claire. That trust had been built in hundreds of small moments. Paper airplanes, pillow forts, quiet evenings reading together. Robert hired a seamstress. Claire worked with her to design a dress that would be both appropriate for a formal event and comfortable for Sophie. They chose silk, soft, seamless, no tags, no scratchy fabrics, a pale blue that brought out Sophie's eyes. The dress arrived 3 days before the gala. Sophie tried it on in Claire's room, spun in front of the mirror, smiled. I look like a princess, she whispered. You look like yourself, Claire said, and that is even better. The night before the gala, Claire could not sleep. She paced her room, ran through every possible scenario, every potential trigger. She had based Sophie's noise-canceling earrings, disguised as pearl studs, a quiet escape route plan. William had agreed to be Sophie's safe person. If things became overwhelming, Sophie could find her grandfather. It would be fine. It had to be fine. At 5 o'clock on the afternoon of the gala, Claire went to Sophie's room to help her dress. She opened the wardrobe. The blue silk dress was gone. In its place hung a different dress, stiff pink fabric, covered in sequins that caught the light like broken glass, scratchy tulle layers, a high collar with a tail the size of a credit card. Claire's blood ran cold. She checked every drawer, every closet. The blue dress had vanished. Sophie appeared in the doorway, ready to get dressed. She saw the pink monstrosity. Her face went pale. No, she whispered. No, no, no. That hurts to look at. I know, sweetheart. Claire forced her voice to stay calm even as panic clawed at her chest. We are not wearing that dress. Let me figure this out. She left Sophie with Ruth and went hunting for answers. She found Victoria in the main hallway. The woman was already dressed for the gala. Crimson gown, hair perfect, makeup flawless. She smiled when she saw Claire. Is something wrong? Victoria asked. Her voice dripped with false concern. Sophie's dress is missing. The blue silk one. Do you know where it is? Oh, that. Victoria waved a dismissive hand. I sent it to the cleaners this morning. It looked wrinkled. Completely inappropriate for tonight's event. You had no right to do that. I had every right. Victoria's mask slipped, showing the steel beneath. Sophie is a Montgomery. She represents this family. She needs to look the part. I ordered a proper dress from Dior. It is hanging in her closet. That dress will cause her physical pain. The texture is torture for someone with sensory processing issues. Then I suggest you teach her to tolerate discomfort. Victoria stepped closer, her perfume overwhelming. Heavy, musky. The world will not accommodate her forever. She needs to learn. Claire's hands clenched into fists. She wanted to scream, to shake this woman, to make her understand that what she was suggesting was cruelty disguised as tough love. If Sophie wears that dress, she will have a complete meltdown in front of 500 guests. Is that what you want? Victoria leaned in, whispered so only Claire could hear. What I want is for you to fail. Spectacularly. So Robert finally sees that you are in over your head, that Sophie needs real help, not some waitress playing savior. She pulled back, smiled sweetly. The gala starts in 2 hours. Better figure something out. Victoria walked away, her heels clicking on marble, each step a countdown. Claire stood in the empty hallway, her mind racing. 2 hours. No dress. A child who trusted her. A man who had given her everything. A future that could shatter in front of New York's elite if she failed. She thought about the blue dress. Gone. Unreachable. She thought about the pink torture device. Impossible. She thought about Sophie's face. The trust. The hope. And then she thought about the connecting door between Sophie's room and Robert's dressing room. It was a terrible idea, an impossible idea, but it was the only idea she had. Claire ran back to the East Wing. Sophie, stay with Grandma Ruth. I need 20 minutes. Where are you going? To fix this, trust me. She grabbed scissors from her sewing kit, took a deep breath, and slipped through the connecting door into Robert Montgomery's private dressing room. The space smelled like cedar and expensive cologne. Suits hung in perfect rows. Shirts arranged by color. Shoes polished to mirrors. Everything organized with military precision. Claire moved quickly, opened drawers, searching. She needed fabric. Soft fabric, seamless, breathable. She found a stack of cashmere sweaters, pristine. Tags still attached, probably gifts that Robert had never worn. She grabbed a white one, $2,000 according to the tag. Pristine white cashmere that had never seen daylight. On the shelf above, silk pocket squares, dozens of them. Blue. Perfect. Claire grabbed the scissors, started to cut. She was halfway through removing the sleeves when the door opened. Robert stood there, fresh from the shower, towel wrapped around his waist, hair dripping. He stared at Claire, at the scissors in her hand, at his mutilated sweater. What on earth are you doing? His voice was more surprised than angry. Is that my cashmere sweater? Claire did not stop cutting. I need this. Victoria took Sophie's dress, replaced it with something that will hurt her. If Sophie wears sequins and scratchy fabric, she will scream. If she wears this, she will be safe. Robert crossed his arms. That is a $2,000 sweater. I know. Claire finally looked up at him, met his eyes. And I do not care. I would cut up the Mona Lisa if it kept Sophie calm tonight. Charge me for it. Deduct it from my pay for the next year. I do not care. For a long moment, Robert just stared at her. Then something shifted in his expression. The corner of his mouth twitched, almost a smile. You are insane, he said, but his voice was warm, affectionate almost, probably. Claire went back to cutting. But I am insane in the right direction. Robert shook his head, watching her work. What are you making? A dress. She held up the sweater, now missing its sleeves. This will be the main body, sleeveless tunic. And these pocket squares will become a sash to hide the rough edges. It will not look like Dior, but it will be comfortable. And Sophie will be able to focus on the people instead of her skin screaming. How long do you need? 30 minutes? You have 20. Guests arrive in an hour and 40 minutes. Claire nodded, grabbed the sweater and silk squares, started to leave. Claire, Robert called after her. She turned. Thank you for caring this much. She did not have words, so she just nodded again and ran. 20 minutes later, Sophie stood in front of the mirror wearing a white cashmere tunic, sleeveless, soft as a cloud, a blue silk sash tied at the waist in an elegant bow, the rough edges of the cut fabric hidden perfectly. It was not couture, but it was beautiful, simple, elegant, and most importantly, comfortable. Sophie touched the fabric, smiled. It feels like wearing air. That is exactly right, Claire said. You are wearing a cloud. They practiced one more time, walking, breathing, remembering the script. At 7 o'clock, the guests began to arrive. Claire watched from an upstairs window, black cars filling the circular drive, women in gowns that cost more than Claire used to make in a year. Men in tuxedos, the glitter of jewelry, the weight of wealth on display. She felt Sophie's small hand slip into hers. "I am scared," Sophie whispered. "I know." Claire squeezed her hand. "But you are also brave, and I will be right beside you the whole time." At 7:30, they walked to the top of the grand staircase. Below, the ballroom blazed with light. Crystal chandeliers, white flowers on every surface. A string quartet playing Vivaldi. 500 people in formal wear. Talking, laughing, drinking champagne. Robert stood at the bottom of the stairs, wearing a tuxedo that made him look like he belonged in a different century. Strong, certain. But his eyes were on Sophie. Only on Sophie. Beside him stood Victoria. Red gown that matched her lipstick. Her hand on Robert's arm. Possessive. She looked up at the staircase. Saw Sophie and Claire. Her expression flickered. Shock. Rage. Then forced composure. The music quieted. A signal. Everyone turned to look at the stairs. 500 pairs of eyes. Sophie's hand tightened in Claire's. Her breathing quickened. "Remember," Claire whispered. "Just like we practiced. Walk. Smile. One sentence." Then Grandpa William. Sophie nodded. They descended. Each step felt like a mile. Claire could feel the weight of all those eyes. The judgment. The curiosity. Some people whispered, pointed at Sophie's unusual dress. Wondered who the woman was holding her hand. But Sophie kept walking. Head up. Breathing through the fear. When they reached the bottom, Robert was there. He knelt to Sophie's level. "You look beautiful, sweetheart." Sophie smiled, a real smile. "Thank you, Daddy." The room rippled. People had not heard Sophie speak in years. Some did not know she could. Sophie turned to the nearest cluster of people. Board members, their faces carefully neutral. She took a breath, used the script Claire had taught her. "Welcome to our home." Her voice was quiet but clear. "I hope you have a nice evening." The room erupted in gentle applause. Sophie's part was done. She had been magnificent. Claire walked her to where William waited in his chair near the fireplace. The old man's eyes were bright with pride. "Well done, little bird," he said softly. "Your mother would be so proud." Sophie climbed into his lap. Safe. The hard part over. Claire turned to slip away. Back to the east wing. Out of sight. Robert's hand caught her elbow, gently. "Stay, please, just for a moment." She looked up at him, saw something in his eyes she had not seen before, something warm, something that made her heart beat faster. "You saved her tonight," he said quietly. "Again." "We saved her," Claire corrected. "You trusted me. That matters." The moment stretched, became something more than professional, something that felt dangerously close to intimate. Victoria appeared at Robert's side. Her smile was sharp enough to cut. "Well, that was certainly creative. Did you make Sophie's dress yourself, Claire?" "Actually, Claire made it from my cashmere sweater," Robert said. His voice was calm, but there was steel underneath. "I think it looks perfect." Victoria's face tightened. "Of course you do." She excused herself. Walked away with stiff shoulders and fury radiating from every step. The gala continued for hours. Claire stayed longer than she intended. Robert kept finding reasons to talk to her, to introduce her to people, to keep her nearby. It was almost midnight when Claire finally returned to the East Wing. Sophie was asleep in William's chair. The old man dozed beside her, both of them peaceful. Claire carefully lifted Sophie, carried her to bed, tucked her in. When she emerged, Robert was waiting in the hallway. "Thank you," he said again. "You already said that." "I know, but I do not think I can say it enough." They stood in the quiet hallway, the sounds of the party distant now, fading. "Claire," Robert said, his voice changed, became something heavier. "I need to tell you something." Before he could continue, a scream shattered the silence. High, terrified, from the direction of Claire's room. "Ruth." Claire ran, Robert followed. They burst into the guest suite, found Ruth on the floor beside her bed, face pale, blue-tinned, hand clutched to her chest, gasping for air. "Mom!" Claire dropped to her knees, checked her pulse, racing, irregular, skipping beats. Ruth's eyes were wide with terror. "Cannot breathe. Took pills. They did not work." "What pills?" Claire looked around frantically. "Where are your heart medications?" "Nightstand," Ruth gasped. Claire grabbed the pill bottle. It was there, but something was wrong. The pills looked different, slightly larger, different color. Robert was already on his phone. Medical emergency, Blackwood Estate, heart attack. Send ambulance now. Claire sniffed the water glass on the nightstand. A bitter almond smell, faint but distinct. And underneath it, something else. A heavy floral scent, the same perfume Victoria wore. Claire looked at the water glass more carefully. A smudge of red on the rim. Lipstick. Crimson red. Someone had switched Ruth's medication. Someone had poisoned the water. Someone had tried to kill her mother. And Claire knew exactly who. The ambulance arrived in 8 minutes. Paramedics worked quickly. Started an IV, applied oxygen. Loaded Ruth onto a stretcher. Claire climbed in beside her mother, held her hand. Ruth's pulse fluttered under her fingers like a dying bird. Please, Claire whispered. Please do not leave me. At the hospital, doctors rushed Ruth into emergency, pumped her stomach, ran tests. Robert sat with Claire in the waiting room. Did not leave, did not check his phone. Just sat. 2 hours later, the doctor emerged. Your mother is stable. But Miss Ashworth, this was not a heart attack. This was an overdose. Digitalis, a heart medication, but 5 times the therapeutic dose. If you had not found her when you did, she would have died within the hour. Claire felt the room tilt. Someone tried to murder her mother. Do you know how she got this medication? The doctor asked. Claire thought about the switched pills, the lipstick on the glass, Victoria's perfume. Yes, she said, I know exactly how. Robert drove Claire back to Blackwood in silence. The party was over, guests gone, the house dark except for a few security lights. In the car, Claire finally spoke. Victoria did this. She switched my mother's medication. She poisoned the water. I know, Robert said. His hands were white-knuckled on the steering wheel. I sent the glass to a private lab, and I pulled the security footage. And? The footage shows someone in a maid's uniform entering your suite at 7:45, right when everyone was at the gala. Who? Robert pulled up a still image on his phone, showed it to Claire. The figure was blurry, dark wig, maid's uniform, face partially obscured, but the shoes were unmistakable. Red-soled stilettos, Christian Louboutin, the same ones Victoria had been wearing earlier in the day before changing into her gala heels. She did not even bother to change her shoes, Robert said. His voice was ice. She thinks she is untouchable. Claire stared at the image, at the proof of attempted murder. She is untouchable. Her father is a senator. She is COO of your company. People like her do not go to jail. This time is different. Robert's jaw clenched. This time she went too far. What are you going to do? I am going to destroy her. He looked at Claire, his eyes hard. But I need your help, and I need you to trust me. What do you need me to do? Go back tomorrow. Act defeated. Pack your bags. Let Victoria think she won. Let her think you are leaving. And then we set a trap. Victoria keeps records, receipts, evidence of everything she does. She is meticulous. If she paid your landlord to evict you, if she bought the digitalis, the proof is somewhere in her suite. You want me to break into Victoria's room. I want you to find the evidence that will put her in prison. Claire thought about her mother fighting for life in a hospital bed, thought about Sophie's trust, thought about the war Victoria had waged from the shadows. Tell me what to do, she said, and I will do it. Robert reached over, took her hand, squeezed it. We end this, he said, together. Outside the car windows, the first light of dawn was breaking. A new day, a new battle, and Claire was ready to fight. The next morning, Claire played her part perfectly. She packed boxes in the East Wing while Mrs. Chen watched with sad eyes, loaded them into a taxi that Robert had arranged, made a show of defeat. Victoria watched from the main house window, her smile visible even from a distance. The taxi rounded the bend of the long driveway, disappeared from view, then circled back to the service entrance where Robert's head of security waited. A man named Thomas, who had worked for the Montgomery family for 20 years, who was loyal to Robert alone. Claire slipped back into the estate through the kitchen, changed into dark clothes, waited. Victoria left for her regular Pilates class at 11 o'clock. She would be gone for exactly 90 minutes. She was nothing if not predictable. Claire had 1 hour to find what she needed. Robert had given her the master key code, had drawn her a map of Victoria's suite, had told her exactly where Victoria kept her most private documents. In the walk-in closet, false bottom of a Hermes Birkin bag that cost more than a car. Claire moved through the empty house like a ghost. Up the grand staircase, down the West Wing corridor, to the double doors of Victoria's private suite. The lock clicked open. Claire stepped inside. The room was everything Claire expected. Mirrors everywhere. Vanity fit for royalty. Designer clothes arranged by color. Shoes displayed like art. The scent of that heavy perfume hanging in the air like poison. Claire went straight to the closet, found the bag on the one shelf. Black leather, gold hardware. She opened it, felt along the silk lining until her fingers found the seam. Pulled. The false bottom came away. Inside was a passport, but the name was wrong. Margaret Brennan, not Victoria Sterling. The photo was Victoria's face but younger, different hair color. Beneath the passport, documents. Letters from a law firm in the Cayman Islands. Mr. Montgomery's charity account. $4 million transferred. Awaiting your arrival Monday. Victoria was not Robert's business partner planning to become his wife. She was a con artist planning to rob him and disappear. Claire's hands shook as she photographed everything with her phone, sent the images to Robert, then to Thomas, then to a secure cloud account. She was replacing the false bottom when she heard it. The front door of the suite opening. Victoria's voice. I forgot my water bottle. Claire's blood went cold. Victoria was not supposed to be back for another hour. The closet had no other exit. Claire looked up, saw the ventilation grate, small, high, probably too narrow. But it was the only option. She climbed onto the vanity, pried the grate loose. The metal groaned, too loud. Victoria's footsteps in the bedroom. Getting closer. Claire pulled herself into the duct, sharp edges cutting into her arms, dust choking her. She pulled the grate back into place just as Victoria entered the closet. Through the slats, Claire watched Victoria go straight to the Birkin bag. Check the false bottom. Her face changed when she saw the documents had been moved. Rage. Fear. Victoria pulled out her phone, made a call. The waitress found the evidence. I do not know how, but she did. We need to move now, today. Grab the girl, get the money. Burn it all down. Claire pressed her hand over her mouth to keep from gasping. Victoria was not just planning to rob Robert. She was planning to kidnap Sophie, to burn Blackwood Estate to cover her tracks. Claire waited until Victoria left. Then she crawled through the duct system, following the airflow, scraping her knees raw on metal seams. She found a grate in the laundry room, kicked it out, dropped to the floor. She ran, found Robert in his office. He was already on the phone with police, with lawyers, with his security team. The photos Claire sent had been enough, but it was not over. Thomas burst into the office. Sir, we have a problem. Derek Kane just left the property with Sophie. Said you authorized a trip to the office. Robert's face went white. I authorized nothing. Derek was Victoria's accomplice, and he had Sophie. What happened next moved with the terrible speed of nightmare. Robert's building, 40th floor. Derek holding Sophie at gunpoint, demanding the passwords to offshore accounts. Victoria arriving by helicopter on the roof, ready to extract them both once they had what they needed. But Robert had called ahead, had the building evacuated, had police surrounding it, and he had Claire. She insisted on coming, on being there, because Sophie would be terrified, would need someone she trusted. They went up the service elevator, Robert and Claire and Thomas, while police staged below. The office door was locked from inside. They could hear Sophie crying, not screaming, just crying, soft, broken. Robert used his master key. The door opened. Derek spun, gun raised, but he was not fast enough. Thomas moved like he had been trained for this his entire life. Disarmed Derek in 3 moves, had him on the ground cuffed. Victoria tried to run, made it to the stairwell before police caught her, and Sophie stood in the corner, shaking, hands over ears, lost in panic. Claire dropped to her knees on the carpet, did not touch Sophie, did not speak. She pulled a linen napkin from her pocket, the one she always carried now, placed it over her own head, sat there in the middle of Robert Montgomery's office, under a napkin tent, while police secured the scene around her. Sophie's crying stopped. She stared at the familiar sight, the signal of safety. She crawled to Claire, lifted the napkin corner. Claire looked at her. The world is too loud again, is it not? Sophie nodded, crawled under the tent. They sat there together, two people under white linen, while Robert watched with tears streaming down his face. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Victoria Sterling, whose real name was Margaret Brennan, was found guilty on 11 counts: fraud, embezzlement, attempted kidnapping, conspiracy to commit murder. The judge gave her 25 years. She screamed as they led her away. This was supposed to be mine, all of it. I earned it. But the courtroom did not care about what she thought she earned. Claire did not attend the sentencing. She was too busy helping Sophie process what had happened, too busy being present for a little girl who had been through too much. Ruth recovered from the poisoning, had the heart surgery Robert paid for, came home healthy for the first time in years. And slowly, carefully, life at Blackwood Estate began to heal. 6 months after the trial, Robert found Claire in the garden. She was teaching Sophie about growing vegetables, explaining how seeds became plants, became food. Sophie listened with total focus, asked questions, laughed when dirt got on her hands. Robert watched them for a long moment. Then he spoke. "Claire, may I ask you something?" She looked up, smiled. "Of course." He knelt in the garden dirt, pulled a small box from his pocket. "I am not asking you to marry me. Not yet. We need time. Sophie needs time. But I am asking if you will stay, not as an employee, as family, as the person who saved my daughter, who saved me." He opened the box. A simple ring, gold band with a small diamond, nothing ostentatious. "Will you build a life with us?" Sophie looked between them, waiting, hoping. Claire's eyes filled with tears. "Yes, yes, of course, yes." Sophie threw her arms around both of them. "We are a real family now." They were married a year later. Small ceremony in the garden at Blackwood. Sophie as flower girl, Ruth walking Claire down the aisle, William in his wheelchair crying happy tears. Claire wore a simple dress. Sophie had helped pick it out, made sure the fabric was soft, that there were no scratchy parts. When Robert kissed his new wife, Sophie clapped. Grandpa William cheered. And for the first time in 5 years, Blackwood Estate felt like a home instead of a museum. 5 years after that, on a bright morning in May, the three of them sat at breakfast together. Sophie was 12 now, confident, still quiet sometimes but no longer silent. She had just received her acceptance letter to a prestigious STEM program. "Mom, look!" Sophie waved the letter. "I got in," Claire beamed. "I knew you would." Robert wiped his eyes, tried to pretend he was not crying. Very dusty in here suddenly. Sophie rolled her eyes. "Dad, you cry at everything now. Only the good things," he said. "Only the very good things." Ruth appeared in the doorway, Grace Chen beside her. Both women healthy, happy. Part of this strange, beautiful family they had all built together. William was gone now, had passed peacefully 2 years prior. But his portrait hung in the library, smiling, watching over them all. On the mantel sat a framed drawing, stick figures under an umbrella, a little girl, a waitress, a father, safe from the noise dragons. Sophie had drawn it years ago, the night Claire first arrived. It had become the symbol of everything they had survived, everything they had become. That afternoon, Claire stood at the window of what had once been the guest suite but was now simply home. She watched Robert and Sophie in the garden, teaching each other, learning from each other, being father and daughter in the way they had both needed for so long. She thought about the restaurant, the napkin tent, the moment when 3 broken people had found each other in the darkness. Sometimes the world was too loud, too harsh, too overwhelming. But sometimes, if you were very lucky, you found the people who would sit with you in the quiet until the storm passed. Sometimes you found your family in the most unexpected places. And sometimes a simple act of kindness could change everything. Claire smiled, touched the ring on her finger, and went to join her husband and daughter in the garden, where they belonged, together, safe, home, the end.